and let you go.
Great, thanks, Ian. Hello, everyone. So my name is Somaya Barangori. I'm Social Economic Lead for Western Canada here in Vancouver office. I'm happy that some of you guys have your cameras on, so it doesn't feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay, let's start. Hope you had your lunch and it's nap time. Okay. Why this is not working? There you go. So we always start the meetings with the land acknowledgement to respect the Indigenous people who live in our land, actually in the land that our offices are there. I know that we have people from Edmonton and Calgary, but I just did it exclusively for Vancouver for now to keep it a bit shorter. Indigenous Land Acknowledgement, Vancouver, British Columbia. We would like to acknowledge that EllisDon, Vancouver constructs and operates in the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. This encompasses the Indigenous people who used and continue to use this land and includes nations such as Kwantlen, Coquitlam, Musqueam, Tawasan, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish. Together, we call upon all of our collective and honored traditions and spirits to work in building for today and future generations. Next part is our agenda. So I will try to keep it short. I will talk a bit about the Indigenous history, about treaties, actually the reason that our department exists and the changes, the reason that triggers the changes in industry. Second part is we talk about the change in procurement, like changes in industry that we have. We will talk about Truth and Reconciliation, Calls to Action, and UNDRIP Act. Some of you might have heard these words and you might wonder what does it mean. Those are actually what triggers all these changes. And then at the end, we will talk about changes for EllisDon and the engagement. So the first part, let's talk a bit about treaties. What are treaties? Treaties are sort of agreements that were done between Indigenous people and the settlers. So settlers are French and British, like the first people that they came to North America. And to be able to work beside the Indigenous people, they did some sort of agreement to show that they respect Indigenous rights and they continue to hunt on their traditional land. And on the other side, they give commitment for education, medicine, security, and sharing economic benefits of the resource with the Indigenous people here. So there were two types of treaties. One of them are historic treaties that were made between 1701 and 1923. And then we have modern treaties that they were made after 1975. There's actually a short video that explains it perfectly because it's designed for kids. If you are interested, I can share it with you guys. I was thinking to play it here, but I thought people might lose interest of watching. So I will share that with you if you like to watch it later. Then later in 1982, we had Constitution Act. Section 25 protects the rights belonging to Aboriginal people. Then Section 35 provides distinct recognition and affirmation of existing Aboriginal and treaty rights. Aboriginal rights are pre-existing rights before settlers. Treaty rights are rights assured within treaties with the Crown and Canada. And some Indigenous nations do not recognize the Government of Canada's authority. So now let's talk about the changes that we have in procurement. So the first thing that triggers all these changes is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission 2015 that calls to action. It has actually 94 actions, but the one that is related to construction industry, it is action 92 that I mentioned it here. We call upon the corporate sector in Canada to adopt the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a reconciliation framework. I will also talk about UNDRIP later. So it has like main 3 points. First one is talking about commitment to meaningful consultation, building respectful relationships, and obtaining the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples before proceeding with economic development projects. Second one is ensure that Aboriginal peoples have equitable access to jobs, training, and education opportunities in the corporate sector. And the third one is talking about providing education for management and staff on the history of Aboriginal people. We will talk later how we are like respecting all these 3 requirements in our Indigenous benefit plan. So the second resource is United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, which is called like the shortened UNDRIP Act. You might have heard this a lot. This is the first word actually that I learned when I started this role. So the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples was adopted by General Assembly on September 2007. Then 14 years later, on June 21st, 2021, UNDRIP Act received the royal assent and came into force in Canada. It has 46 articles. Again, I have the PDF file that includes all the full article, but the article 32.2 actually affects the construction industry. That brings commitments for us. So let's just review this one. The states shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the Indigenous people concerned through their own representative institution in order to obtain their free and informed consent prior to approval of any project affecting their lands or territories and other resources, particularly in connection with the development, utilization, or exploitation of mineral, water, or other resources. So this actually falls more on authority and owners' side. But this is why we see in the RFPs for new projects all these requirements to engage with the Indigenous people. So following this, Prime Minister writes a letter to PSPC Minister in December 21st, 2021, actually saying that we need to take more serious actions on the path to reconciliation, and we need to implement the UNDRIP Act. Which leads to ensuring a minimum of 5% of the total value of federal contracts to be held by Indigenous businesses. So the 5% that you might have heard, like for in federal projects that are required to be awarded to Indigenous businesses, actually comes from here. Another change that happened following the UNDRIP Act was Vancouver City Council adopts a strategy for implementing UNDRIP. This is also new. It just happened like a couple months ago in Vancouver. In October 2022, Vancouver became the first city in Canada to formally adopt a strategy for the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People at the municipal level. The city had approved a number of early actions, including the participation of the Musqueam Indian Band, Squamish Nation, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation in procurement projects. I have this document, it's like 30 pages, explaining like what is their strategy, how they are planning to engage with these 3 nations in Vancouver, which it will affect like mainly all the projects coming up in Vancouver area. Which requires consultation and engagement with these 3 nations. Squamish is actually more is in North Vancouver. Musqueam is closer to the airport, Vancouver Airport, and Tsleil-Waututh is also in North Shore, in east side of North Shore. So changes for EllisDon. After all these new things happening in industry, it also affects like the projects that we have and the structure in EllisDon. So this is the reason that our department was created. In January 2022, The new department, which is called Socioeconomic Development and Indigenous Relations, was created. So the team, actually, like Chris was our director. I think some of you might know him, but he left, unfortunately, before Christmas. He had some family things that he needed more time. But I had the opportunity to work with him for a year, and I learned really a lot from his knowledge. But now we're looking for a new director. Let's see how long does it take. Then our team is very small. It's myself supporting the Western projects, and my colleague Gagan Sharma, who is supporting the Eastern projects. She's based in Ottawa. Then we have the plan to have some project dedicated roles. Like it's the same role, but dedicated to just one project. For now, we only have one person. Shauna Roberts is the socioeconomic lead for Cowichan Hospital. She's located in the project in Vancouver Island. I don't think that she could make it here like today to the meeting. But yeah, this person is supposed to report directly to the project manager. But for sure, like we will like work together, and that person will have the support of our corporate department. So I listed some of the projects, like some of the highlight projects that I am working on it, just to give you an idea, like what's going in industry and what are the changes that we are seeing in new projects. So the first one is Cold Lake in Alberta. It's a future fighter capability project with DND and DCC, National Defence Canada. So it's interesting, when we were awarded this contract, there was no requirement for Indigenous engagement, but seeing all this like changes with UNDRIP and Truth and Reconciliation, they submitted a change order and asked us to engage with the communities there. So the team up there has been doing a great job. Brian Newton is the project manager. Hector is one of my colleagues there who is like working on this engagement. So we are working on drafting this Indigenous participation plan. There is like, we don't have target to commit, but it's like best effort to engage with Indigenous businesses and also to provide some employment and education and training on site. Second project is the Cowichan District Hospital Replacement Project, the one that I mentioned, like Shannon is working on it. This one is in Vancouver Island. Unfortunately, there was not much requirement to engage with the nations from the owner side. But because the nations, for sure, they see the news, like they see the changes in like other projects, and this is like affecting the job, and it's like there are some issues going on, and it's been like the project has been slowed down a bit. It's not like on us, because for sure this requirements has to come from the owner. But just to give you an idea that how important is this new engagement, and if we don't take it serious, it might affect our jobs. The second one, the third one is the New Surrey Hospital. This is a pursuit that we are competing on it with PCL. It's with Fraser Halls and Infrastructure BC. It's a big project. It has a lot of like Indigenous engagement requirements. We are seeing some thresholds actually. They're asking for 6% of total workforce to be Indigenous, 12% to be certified trade Indigenous, which I think it's going to be really challenging, like considering the population of Indigenous people around this area. And there is also requirements to engage Indigenous business subcontracting with like 3 specific nations, Kwantlen, Katsi, and Semiahmoo. This is also something that we see in Vancouver project, which makes life easier for us. Like they identify which nations are exactly impacted, so we know like with who we have to deal with. Sorry, yeah, there was a question.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think it's Bernadine had a question.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't notice that.
Hi, yes. I'm actually on the Cowichan District Hospital Replacement Project.
Oh, wonderful.
And so I do work closely with Shanna and Indigenous engagement. And so I guess when we initially kicked off, because it is a government infrastructure project and BCIB is within the Alliance, there was certain criteria and expectations for the workforce to be under BCIB and unionized. However, the I guess issue that they were having is that where we are building the hospital, Cowichan, they were not necessarily allowing the Cowichan members to work on the hospital without being permitted or under BCIB. And so the nations or a small group of workers within the nation had been holding a peaceful protest to say they should be able to work on their own backyard. And so it is slowly getting resolved. I believe the health minister, Adrian Dix, had sent out some notification that government infrastructure gave too much power to BCIB, and there's another unionized, I guess, government company involved. So yeah, in that regard, we are still commencing with Indigenous engagement, and there should be a work plan set forth for the alt and advisory groups by the end of the month, I'm hoping. And so, yeah, hopefully we start I guess, being able to procure not only manpower, but more Indigenous contractors and entrepreneurs. And so thank you. I just thought I would make that comment.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Actually, I was going to reach out and like have a discussion because Chris was more involved with Cowichan, but now that he's gone, yeah, I wanted to be engaged more and learn more. Thank you so much. All right, so where I was at. Yeah, we talked about the new Surrey Hospital that we are preparing the draft plan and we're going to submit it, I believe, next month. It's coming soon. But we already started the engagement with the three nations to build up a relationship and develop the relationship with them to see what is the capacity there, like which areas they are interested to work with. Because this is all new. Like it used to be just like employment, but now it's the procurement, which makes it difficult. Like they don't have really that many businesses with the capacity of engaging with larger scopes of work. So that is the challenging part that I believe we need to support them. We will talk about it later on. What are the strategies that we have? So another pursuit is the Marpole Transit Center that I believe we submitted the package, Ian, right? And we are waiting for the answer. This one was also very interesting. I think it's new in industry that they are like specifying just one nation. So one of the requirements for this project is whoever is the successful bidder must enter to an agreement with Musqueam Nation and develop that Indigenous participation plan with them. It's a kind of like partnership. They have to be a partner with the builder, which is like interesting and new. So we'll see what would be the answer. We might have. Oh, actually, we also signed a memorandum of understanding with this nation. So we are interested to work with them either in this project or it might be other projects. So let's talk a bit about the engagement. So if you remember those 3 bullets that I mentioned from Truth and Reconciliation, it brings us the commitment to include our strategies, like in our Indigenous participation plan, how we are going to achieve them. So the first part is cultural awareness training that we include in the plan, and we are for sure like working on it and developing it. The first one is cultural awareness training for all employees. I know that we have some material in UltiPro. We are working on it to develop and add more material on it, and hopefully everyone can take a bit of time to just go through the material and educate themselves, because this is like new to everyone. The second part is cultural awareness training for senior leaders. We are planning to do one for Western Canada and one for Eastern. The third one is to do this training for job sites. So this will be like specific to project. We're gonna approach like the nations close to the project and ask their input to prepare kind of training to include their like cultural history and things that are important for them. Also the land acknowledgement for the site people, to provide the training for contractors and anyone who's going to work on site. Actually, we have 2 pictures here. Yeah, those pictures are from the mental health facility in Coquitlam that was done a while ago, I believe. And this is like the opening ceremony that was done by the local Indigenous people. So second part is advancing Indigenous training and employment opportunities. This part might be like more familiar to some of you guys, because I know we've had this like in previous jobs too. So what are the strategies to do it? One of them is the career fair. Like we try to show up in the job fairs that are held by the like local Indigenous people to update them about the possible opportunities that we have in this job. Developing a community skill database. Like reaching out to them to see what are the available like workforce in the area, training partnership programs. So as an example, like if you go back to the Cold Lake project that I mentioned, like we have a change order for it and we are working on an Indigenous benefit plan. We are engaging with the nations around the project. Like this picture is in a treaty day with one of the nations there, Kehevan Nation. So they invited us to like participate and have a booth there. Hector, my colleague, is like supporting the team in Cold Lake with this engagements. So we had a booth there. He is the like Chief Trevor John. Yeah, he's the chief of the nation. Young, nice guy. Like he cares a lot about the new generation. So they appreciated a lot that we showed up. It didn't really cost that much for us, but like it was an opportunity for like young kids. It was actually for high school kids, like to learn about possible opportunities in construction. And even if just one person, like one of the kids, decides like to study architecture or like health and safety officer and join like construction industry, that will mean a lot like to them after the event we talk. And that this is like the kind of things that they're looking for, not just like the contracting opportunity. So another criteria that we are working on is to increase Indigenous business opportunities. So again, this is like a requirement we see in the RFPs for the projects. We are working on the strategies, how we can engage more Indigenous businesses. There are some of the ways, like visit local businesses, advance notice of anticipated work, facilitate partnership with non-Indigenous partners, and focus locally. Again, as an example, like Cold Lake team has been doing a great job. Like they reached out to all these local Indigenous businesses. They're creating actually a matrix to see like what is the capacity there, and like holding some workshops for the local Indigenous businesses to explain them about the opportunities, the requirements for the projects. I think Hector was. Hi,
Hey, Samaya.
Hector. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Hector. This guy here.
I just want to make a comment on engagement.
Sure.
We were lucky enough in the Cold Lake area to start engagement before the change order happened. So through Allied, we were able to meet with a lot of these groups, and then the change order happened after. So we had a legit relationship prior to the change order. So it's important to start your engagements as soon as you can with all these groups before you need to. These groups will know very well that you're there just because you have a job. So it's important to reach out and start to meet with these groups prior to a contract being awarded or anything like that. It just shows that it's a meaningful engagement. That's all I want to say, Samaya.
That was a great point, actually, Hector. Thank you. Yeah, I forgot that you had all like started this engagement like even before I joined the team, which is a great point because building this relationship, it takes time. Like we need to show up more and more, and then they see the same faces. Then like just showing up 1 week before the construction is going to start and say, "Hey guys, we have a project here." It's like it's too late. Thanks, Hector. Then the last part is support small Indigenous business opportunities, which is like most of the businesses, existing businesses with these nations are like really small Indigenous business owned. And we are like considering how to engage them like with the project, consider some small like work packages or connecting them with the subcontractors like to get a piece of the work there. So as I said, those are like the bullets that we include in the plan and are the most important parts that we are developing the strategies for. Community-directed legacy initiatives. So I have just some examples here, like how we can like engage with the communities directly. Those pictures are again an example. This is from the Treaty Day that I mentioned, like me and Hector, we just went to Kihivin Nations like event. They had like a storytelling for kids. And this is again another picture from the job fair that I just mentioned. We were expecting like some businesses show up or like people that are looking for a job, but all these kids excited and like learning about construction. There are other opportunities like providing scholarships, sponsorship of powwow, which is like a traditional ceremony that they have, community garden behind the school to teach cultural awareness, and like on and on. The list is long. And what I learned is like you just leave the door open, you show up, and they tell you actually what they need. And most of the time is not really big or expensive stuff. As I said, like for example, this job for like didn't cost us really that much. I don't know like how much, Hector, like 1,000, 2,000, but it
No,
had
not
really
even.
there you
No,
go,
it
not
was
even that.
yeah. The cost to buy in, I believe, was two door prizes of $250 or more. So
Oh
it
my
cost
God,
us
yeah.
about $500.
There you go, yeah. But the impact was really good, and they really appreciated that a lot. And when we show up more, they see that like we are committed. It's not like we are there just when we need them. And what is the benefit of like all these engagements? So the first of all, it demonstrates positive values in action. So we show that we are not just talking about good things in our plan, like we are actually showing it, we are taking an action. It provides positive cultural, educational, and environmental legacy benefits. So again, like we are following the commitments to truth and reconciliation. Enhances partner relationships with Indigenous communities and industry. Like it provides the opportunity of developing the relationship, not just like with one specific project in general, because these people have lived there for thousands of years and they're going to be there forever. And we also have projects in their lands. So it's really like building up a long-term relationship. keep that in mind, that like it's not like we just show up for one project and then it's over. We're gonna have more and more projects, and moving forward, we have these engagements really like with federal projects, provincial, and I won't be surprised if we see them even for private sector. Industry requested to lead the way. So our role here is really important and interesting because of the history. Like, government doesn't have really good relationship with this Indigenous communities. So they actually asked us that we help them to build up this relationship. You can show the government how to build real relationships and trust. And we've heard this actually from our clients, National Defense too. And this is the end. Collaboration works. This is one of the old pictures actually for Cold Lake project. I think it's one of the early engagements with Frog Lake, which is one of the nations close to the Cold Lake project. And this one is from Winnipeg and Regina. It was an expo for one of the projects, fact that we are working on it. Like we are not awarded the contract yet, but just to show you like how much in advance we need to start like building these relationships. And these guys are from Manitoba Métis Federation that are a potential partner in this project if we get it for sure. Okay, everybody can wake up. End of story. And yeah, if you have questions, I know that we still have some time. If you have some questions, please go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a couple here. Brett had a question here. Said, would a part of a strategy be splitting scope between two subs to ensure Indigenous business is supported, but the total scope is also not at risk? So in your example, you said a smaller business that may not have experience for larger scope scales. So I'm sure there's lots of different strategies, but I don't know if you want to take that on, Samaya, or if anybody else has an example of what they've done in the past. But that's certainly, one example is, we still have to adhere to our procurement requirements, right? When we're vetting trades and pre-qualifying them, and they have to be rated for SDI in most cases, depending on the value of the contract. So like those are all important things to keep in consideration or take into consideration. But certainly, we find that our subcontractors often have probably closer relationships with First Nations communities where they have either, partner organizations or the smaller, member-owned businesses that can often act as a sub to a sub and get some involvement or a piece of the work, so to speak. So, maybe it's an earthworks contractor that hires a small crew to do detailed excavation or something on a project site. Like that could be just an example. But definitely, we still need to manage our risk, and I think it's a great question, Brett, because it will come up more and more as these requirements, kind of spread across the projects in all areas.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually our main challenge in Cold Lake project. It's a big project, and all the businesses, as I said, like we did a research, and all the existing businesses are small, and they don't have the capacity like to get one large scope of work. So we are trying to figure it out. Like one of the options is like to give some of Div 1 scopes, some to break down some like smaller scopes, like, I don't know, snow removal or like landscaping. Another opportunity is like to connect them to our subcontractors. Actually, we are counting on this more. That's why it's very important to be the middle person there to connect them, to start like negotiating and building up like a relationship. So the larger contractors can like give a piece of work to the smaller businesses. But again, it's new for everyone and we are all learning. And that's why we need to share the experiences.
Absolutely. And then we have one from Mark. Mark Condon said, do we have any branches out to the communities and leaders about or for co-op students to learn from us and possibly take us on as co-op students to learn from them? So like a crossover effect. So if I understand that right, it's kind of like like they're learning from us in terms of gaining experience in the role, but we're also getting some form of learning from them through just having them as an employee. Is that fair to say, Mark?
Yeah, that's 100%.
Ah, okay, perfect.
Yeah,
any
but
thoughts?
as I mentioned, we're gonna have some like project dedicated roles. So maybe it could be an opportunity for some co-ops, if they are interested, they can support the project team in this engagement. Because there will be a lot of work, like there is a lot of like tracking documents because, I forgot to mention that we also need to track all these engagements and submit monthly reports for both the owner and also the communities. So for sure, there's a lot of opportunities there also, like for co-op students to be involved and help and learn at the same time.
Mr. Molnar.
Hey, thanks for the presentation, July. That was wonderful. Really good information, and I think you and I have discussed some of our overlapping roles. I'm kind of looking after environmental from a BC regional perspective, and there's a lot of things that overlap with our roles and the Indigenous communities, and kind of based off of some of the initiatives we had with past projects like the YVR project. I had taken some of the proactive efforts we've had to have these good relationships and tried to build out a separate environmental protection plan that is built into our environmental management plans. Ideally, these should be set up and structured before we even mobilize on the project, but it's just going through and asking some potential risk features that we might encounter throughout the project. Maybe asking, do we have a representative on the team to engage on elements like this? Is there a site survey that might be required for archaeological artifacts? If so, do we have a chance find management plan set up for the project, or has that even been explored? But I think I've shared that with you in the past, but doors always open if we want to review that. I'm happy to improve that and make it a little bit more just well suited for projects that we can make it project specific as we start the mobilization.
Sure. Thanks, Daniel, for the comments. And by the way, the plants were dying at the office. I just watered them yesterday. You need to come to the office more.
I was going to be there next Thursday to do that.
Awesome. Another question for you, Samaya. So, I mean, Bernadine had made a great comment and brought up a challenge that may not have been foreseen at the time, but is obviously causing some sort of unneeded pressure on the project and the project team. But what are some of the other challenges that people should be aware of, or maybe that we've come across in our ability to actually meet some of the employment targets that we're seeing on projects?
Yeah, for sure. Like for existing projects, like that they don't have an Indigenous, like active Indigenous participation plan, we might see the change, like they might receive a change order to engage more. But for sure, like I'm there, like if you need anything, just send me an email, like I'm happy to support. I might have like an existing connections with the nations here. We are also reaching out to employment, education, training department in different nations that can help us with the employment part that you mentioned, Ian. We are also working with Access and Blade Runners. They are also very good resource, like to help us with the employment part. They have like some programs related to the construction, and every year they have like 120 like students graduated from the program. So we are developing like the partnership with them too, so I can like connect them to different projects that we have if it's in Vancouver area. Yeah, just let me know.
Okay, perfect. I think Hector has his hand up again.
Yeah, one of the challenges that we come across in the Cold Lake area with the nations around there and employment is a very basic one, is they don't have travel. They don't have cars, they don't have licenses. Yeah, so one of the things that we're dealing with is how do we get the employees that are interested in working from their nation, which is about an hour away sometimes, all the way to site. Right, so that's one of the challenges that you guys might face, is the fact that a lot of these people don't have driver's licenses or a way to travel. So to get those employments, you would have to deal with that fact and get a solution for that.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's why we need to like really communicate with the nations to see what is their need. Sometimes like we can support them like to get the driving license. Like it doesn't cost that much for us, and we usually have a budget. Actually, I forgot to mention this part too. So for PMs that they are concerned about the cost, because all this engagement, they come with a cost. So in Surrey Hospital, we have a project, we have a budget, like there is, if I'm not mistaken, 8 million to support this, all these engagements. And also for Cold Lake, we also submitted like a budget that we think this much it costs to do the engagement. So these are all things we can include in our plan.
Awesome.
Like providing the transportation or like helping them to get the driving license, whatever they need.
Awesome. I've got Siju has her hand up. I'll just make one additional comment to that. I think that's a great point, Hector, that you raised about transportation. One thing that may not be as obvious is that sometimes when we do have these employment targets, the communities actually won't even have the members that are, one, actually interested in the opportunities, or two, have the volume of people that you would need to actually meet that target. So those are things that we need to be aware of before we become contractually obligated to actually meet those targets. So just wanted to add that in there. Siju.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian. I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. I'm happy to see all the work that your team has been doing. I wanted to share specifically with the Calgary area and the Western Civil area some of the things that we've been trying to do. I think Hector brought up a good point about building that relationship ahead so that it's not at the point of, winning a project and you're trying to then start formulating the relationship. Some of the things that we've been exploring in this second year around now is working with Community Futures Treaty 7 here in Alberta and trying to build a relationship with bringing in internship placements within EllisDon. They have an employer symposium that they run annually, and this is our second year. We're going to be participating in it next week. And the hope is that we're able to home some students within our area. One challenge that I have seen, to be honest, is that the type of positions that they tend to look for don't necessarily transfer into our world. So I think that we can do more work on our end to sell construction and sell the future so that, we do see better clientele to come in. But we're hoping that we'll be able to place some students this time around. Last year, we weren't able to hold a successful placement, but we're really hoping that this year we'll get some good placement and just start building that pipeline and getting them introduced to construction and just kind of stepping out and doing that. So, but thank you so much for the presentation. It's really good to see. If there's any way in the future that we can get some guidance in that, it was just something that we kind of ran with, but happy to get some more support on that.
That's great.
Thanks,
for sharing
Siju.
that, Siju.
Actually, I should visit Calgary. That is the office I haven't been to. We were trying to schedule something before holidays. It didn't work. You guys were so busy, but yeah, I should reach out and we set up something.
Awesome. So we're at 45 after. That was a time limit we set. So appreciate everybody for taking the time. I think if everybody hopefully got a takeaway from this is that, this is going to become probably one of the larger requirements that we'll see across all projects in the public and private sector to some degree going forward. And, we have an extensive amount of experience and expertise internally at EllisDon. And, that's one benefit I think that we have as an organization is to be able to leverage that. So at least having this virtual introduction to some people and knowing who to reach out to is a good starting point to at least start to bounce ideas off each other and share lessons learned so that we can help successfully navigate this on projects going forward. So thanks, Samaya, for taking the time to present to the group. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time to join today. And hopefully everybody's having a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Again
So
soon.
yeah,
Thank
you have my
you.
email.
Bye.
Feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.